is your first time listening to this, Coach's Corner seems to be a good name for this. So we'll leave it. We'll call this a Coach's Corner episode, um, for now. So we'll see.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
me and
exactly.
my buddy Johnathan Kaplan here, head coach of Swim RVA. We're getting together and we're just going to talk a little bit of swimming, what's front of mind for us. The goal here is to talk about things that either like we're working on our teams or something that we think will help other coaches. So if you're a coach listening to this, and if there's something you want us to talk about as we put up clips for this or anything, you can send me or Jonathan a message on Instagram, and we'll answer what we can. So this isn't like a formal. This is not a formal podcast trying to for me to interview Jonathan. This is just two coaches talking about
Right.
something. Something that I really like about this that kind of gave me some idea. Like I enjoy talking to the same person over and over because usually when I've done interviews, I've always like, and shout out to like the great podcasters out there who can process and think things through on the spot. But like
In
me,
real time and answer the question you had later on. Yeah.
yeah, like me, it's like I'll have questions in the moment and stuff, of course, but like it's an hour or two later, I'm like, wait, but what about so like a lot of times you don't get a second chance with a guest, right? So I think this is
Right.
cool for me and you to just talk on things. I think the last episode we talked about I talked about like finding quality coaches. And then you talked about what did you talk about again? Man, all I can think about is the senior speed group.
See the speed, man. It's so much fun. Now we talked a lot about the 51% rule
There we go.
that I had for years and how we, our goal is to make it more common than not that athletes are bought into what you're trying to offer without having to essentially create attendance policy to get there. And we've found success with it. It's not for every team, but it's been awesome for us.
Yeah. No, that's good. So if you haven't, just a quick, his 51% rule is that if you can get 51% of a group bought in, like bought into the work, bought into the attendance, bought into that team that and we were talking about like your highest performing team. Maybe it's your highest 13-14 group or your highest high school group,
Right.
whatever. But if you can get 51% of the team bought in, then you'll get that jump to like 80 to 90% of the group because that's
It
just
happens
how it
real
goes.
quick. Yeah, when that happens. Yeah. You
Yeah.
basically are catching the on the fencers, right? The on the fencers, especially with teenagers, on the fencers can come and go in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
They'll just kind of go with the flow. Like, are you going to practice? Yeah, I guess I'll go to practice. Are you going to skip? Yeah, I guess I'll skip. You get
Yeah.
a lot of those, but once it's more common than not that everybody's like, no, of course I'm going to practice. Why are you asking that question? Yeah, I got goals. You got goals because I got goals, and they're willing to come to practice and get the work done. Then next thing you know, you've got an environment that's filled with a bunch of kids that want to be there and they want to work hard. That doesn't mean that they're not dealing with the same. I'm really tired. I'm sore. I had this rough test. I stayed up late last night. They're still dealing with all of that. But the difference is when you're surrounded by other people who also want to be there, you're dealing with it with a lot of other people who are going through the same thing and you're going to work together to overcome it versus working together to complain about it and commiserate, which happens a lot of times when you have groups that have to be there. Misery loves company. It's so much easier to complain. But when you have the 51 turns to 81 turns to 91%, and it's entirely up to them to decide to show up, and they're still showing up even though they stayed up late last night or they're a little bit congested or whatever, then they know they feel supported and they're in a place where everybody else kind of feels the same, and you're going to get a really positive work environment when you do that.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to foster this more on like a micro level with my team. So like the my main group is our 13-14s, and about 2 years ago, we shifted our program to like there's like a minimum requirement to get in the group, but it's a pretty low minimum. It's like 1050s free on a
Right.
minute. And like so which is if you're an okay swimmer, you're gonna make that, especially a 13-14-year-old. But
Yeah, you're
so I have like non-B kids up to like sectional level kids in this group. And I have about 30 kids that practice that sort of thing. So to give everybody what they need, of course, I'm writing workouts with like multiple intervals. Sometimes I'm doing separate sets. Sometimes we're doing everything all the same and it's just on effort. But something I do with this is because you want your top athletes to like still want to push. Like you're always going to have the kids who want to push and they want to do the hardest thing. And the top athletes, they don't want to swim the lazier kids. I mean, I don't think all the kids are lazy, but you know what I mean? Like that's why teams have separate
Right.
groups, keep like-minded kids together or like ability kids. But in my group, and we think it's important to have them all mixed up because we don't want the big reason why we did it, and we kind of got this idea from Sarasota Sharks, is we don't want to be telling kids at 11, 12, or 13, 14, like you're the slow guy because you're on the
You're not
slow
the guy.
team.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you don't really know, especially boys,
You
man.
don't. Yeah.
You just don't a 12-year-old boy who's bad in quotations could be completely different at 14. And it just takes like one moment, one good meet, and they pop off.
Or a growth spurt, like
Yep.
you just don't know. It could be a change in commitment. Maybe that swimmer was really dedicated to soccer, and so they had so attendance policy, up until our attendance, up until that point, and then they decide, you know what, let me just try the swimming thing one time, and they give it their all for a couple months, and then boom, now they're exploded. But if they have had it in their mind from the get go that I'm just not one of those kids, then they would be significantly less likely to ever made the decision to give
Hmm.
swimming a full try in the
Exactly.
first place. We basically made a living off of those kids at Swim RVA. Now, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, we've had, just like any other program, we have kids transfer to us and transfer away. That happens. But if you go back and look at a lot of the stars that we've had, the ones that are setting team records and the ones that are winning age group champs and stuff like that, a lot of those kids rewind a couple of years, they were in like the novice or advanced novice group, or
Hmm.
they were not even getting the cuts. And then 1 year later, they're finaling, and 2 years later, they're winning. It's like, it's crazy how a supportive environment can give every single kid a vision to a path to greatness
Yes.
versus you don't want to walk that path from the get go. So we do the same thing you're talking about, where we have athletes who, might be on the lower end swimming in the same practice as the athletes on the higher end, because a lot of them might be best friends too. That
Yes.
might
Yeah.
be like, that's my boy,
Peers.
or that's my girl. Like you want to train with them, but so maybe you can do the warm-ups together and you can split up for different interval sets.
Hmm.
There's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of the workouts that I've created over the years, like you said, we might be doing 50s on a minute. Well, just about anybody at the senior level is going to be able to make 50s on a minute,
Yeah.
but we're doing them at a high lactate tolerance levels where I expect these people to be holding 24s and 25s. Well, all right, well, the girl that's holding 30s and 31s, or the boy that's holding 32s, can still do 1050s on a minute all out, and they can be side by side with that other person. So I love that environment creation.
Yeah. And then it also, and if you ever read the book Outlier, if you ever read the book Outliers.
Love Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started. I love
So
Malcolm Gladwell.
that was one of the first books I read when I was like early coaching. So it's just very strong in my mind, like before I even started
Yeah.
reading books that even
And if,
relate.
for those of you who've never read it, has nothing to do with coaching, but Outliers and Tipping Point, like all those Malcolm Gladwell books, they change your perspective, right?
Yeah.
They get you to think about things from a different zoomed out perspective, and they're awesome. I highly recommend them.
Yeah.
But go ahead, yeah, I want to hear
Talent Code's another good one I'd put in that
about.
category. You haven't read Talent Code. And then the little book of Talent Code that's like actionable. Anyways, really good for coaches. But Outliers, a big idea in there is it's not necessarily about like talent, it's more about exposure. So like they looked at these hockey players in Canada and the kids that really moved up. And it was the kids who just they were because they do it by age of your
Right.
year or something.
When your birthday is right now.
Yeah, so it was like the kids who were 14 sooner or 10 sooner, they were a little more developed, so they were like better in quotations. There's bigger, stronger kids, and they got put on higher level teams sooner. So you have a kid who like doesn't get put on a higher level team till they're 14, but the kid that's been with the higher level team with the better coaches since they were 10, like long term, they're just gonna be a little better because they have exposure to better coaching and a better elite environment sooner.
Right.
So that's part of our idea also with combining the groups is like, the way we did it before is I had a group of like 14 really good 13, 14-year olds, who were with me, but I wasn't
Yeah.
coaching any of the other 13, 14-year-olds. So now, and this isn't I'm going to say this, it's going to sound like I'm just talking good about myself and bad about coaches on our staff, but now more kids get a chance to be with better coaches.
Yeah.
And it's not like a bad thing. Like it's just
That's not a knock on the other coaches.
it's
This
an
is what you do
experience
for
thing.
a living. Like you've got all the experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
So just
every coach did a different part in their own development. I get that.
exactly. Like when I first started, I couldn't be the coach that ran a group of 35 kids, sectional
Right.
non-B, and made it effective. But now I
Right.
can. And we have those kids who like maybe they wouldn't have been exposed to me for 2 years, getting for 2 years later, getting my coaching now and my perspective in their swimming now. So they're moving up faster. So like at the end of the summer, um 66% of my group had like A times, which is really good. Like I feel
Really
like
good.
A
Yeah.
I feel like A times, if you know if you're international, USA Swimming has these time standards. I feel like A times are kind of like the if you get A times, you're like doing pretty good. Like it's not, you're not
You're
qualifying for
a
the
solid
biggest
swimmer.
A, but you're like A times are solid. We're like, okay, we're a swimmer now. We're doing something. So to get 2/3 of that group, and when it started, it was not that. To A times at the end of the summer before they move on to high school and stuff was really
Yeah.
good. But
Uh,
outliers really good.
Totally agree. And I'll tell you something that's kind of been on my brain a lot, especially this season, is actually kind of on topic. I like how we generally start these conversations with like, well, what's on your mind, and the thing that's on my mind right now is very similar to what you were just talking about, but you're describing in a training group how you want, maybe like similar age kids to be able to have the chance to train together, and it inspires, kids to want to be more, which I 1,000% agree with.
Hmm.
Um, Also, along those lines, we want, if the kid is in the group, they physiologically belong there, like they can hang with the practices. It's not, maybe they are bouncing with another sport and they're only coming twice a week versus the super dedicated kids coming 5 6 times a week. But how many times have you seen a really fast kid swim 2 times a week and they still can hang with everybody else? It's not my place to say you can't come and train in the group. But
Yeah.
anyway, the thing we've been really doing a lot this year, we do it every year, but we very intentionally set up different scenarios for it, is um, giving our older kids a chance to kind of guide the younger kids and be mentors for them. Easy to do when you're on a small team of 80, 90, 100 kids.
Yeah.
Not so easy to do when you've got 550 plus kids.
Hmm.
But I've always told our families from our open houses, and this is the God's honest truth. I grew up on a very, very small team in Winter Haven, Florida. Actually swam in the Rowdy Gaines Olympic pool for a lot of years. Same hometown as Rowdy. But anyway, my team was like 75 kids, right? It had that small town feel. Everybody knew everybody. And I've
Hmm.
always said, no matter how large my program gets, I want that small team family feel to be the case for our program. And if that means I got to hire more coaches to get better coach to swimmer ratio, and we got to set up more events so the kids get to know each other, then we're going to do it. Right. So what we've done this year, instead, we've had several situations where we have our inter squad meet, for example, and the older kids are at the water at the same time as the younger kids, and we buddy them up. And we don't just buddy them up; they literally sit together and they become like buddies. Like the senior pairs up with the age grouper or whatever.
Hmm.
And then fast forward to 2 weeks later, and we had a USA swimming meet, which is rare. Where we had 2 sessions where the 12 and unders were actually in the water at the same time as 13 and over. Boom, another opportunity. One day later, we had what's called a crossover clinic, where I know it sounds like crossover turns. It's not actually crossover turns. It's where the older kids on the team coach the younger kids. They cross over and become a coach for the day,
Hmm.
and they just work on starts and turns and underwaters and technique and stuff like that. And then we have fast forward a week and a half later, we have what's called a spicy Saturday, which is just a Saturday practice where practices are still hard. They're just a little bit different. We have like a team bonding opportunity where they bring breakfast afterwards. And everybody on the team is invited, and we leave the pool open for like just open free play for an hour.
Hmm.
And we did another 15 20 minute crossover opportunity where the older kids coached the younger kids and taught them breaststroke pullouts. So we've had like 4 or 5, almost 6 different really awesome opportunities in the first 4 weeks of the season. And what's happening is the older kids will walk past the younger kid in the novice group that they would have never known, and the novice kid is like waving them down, and they're like, oh, and they run up and give them a hug, and that's good enough for me. But what's
Yes.
really happening is the younger kids are seeing that path towards becoming that kid one day,
Hmm.
versus before they would hold those kids on a pedestal and be like, I could never go be in the senior group like that kid. Well, now they realize they're just people. It's no
Mm.
different than when, an athlete in a senior level right now in high school goes to a higher level meet and they get to meet, like a Katie Grimes or a Katie Ledecky or a Caleb Dressel or something like that, and realize they're just people. They're just
Yeah.
people just like when you can get there too. It's been awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. So what's your split? Is it like 12 and under and then 13 and over? Is that the where you draw the line, or is it high school helping everybody else?
So at the event, so we call them the crossover clinics,
Hmm.
and at the crossover clinics, we very intentionally have one session where the older, like senior and pre-senior and senior speed levels work with the junior and age group levels. That's like the 10 to 12 range, or like 9 to 12 range.
Yeah.
And then 1 hour later, we bring all the younger kids and the novice and advanced novice kids that are, like 10 and under,
Hmm.
and the older kids can stay and work with them, but now the age groupers and juniors get to turn back around and they become the coaches also.
Got
And
it.
we set up different situations like this. I wish I came up with the idea, like the where it lives now, is kind of from my brain, but this was not my idea. I actually learned it when I was the assistant director at Yoda in YMCA, the Triangle area down in the Raleigh Cary area. And Chad Onken, really good buddy of mine, he swam with me at Florida State, but I coached with Chad for a couple of years down at Yoda, and they did a thing called Big Fish, Little Fish.
Hmm.
And so, I've always thought that was just fascinating. Theirs was a little bit different because they actually sent the kids out to the different sites versus we try to bring everybody into our main site. But
Yeah.
it's just a really cool idea. I highly recommend everybody do it in some way, shape, or form.
So all the questions I have for you are because we know it's important. We've tried to do it. We've done a little bit of it. But for us, we run into the problem of event load on like our high schoolers. Like at least like what's the high school season like in Virginia?
Yeah,
The high school season? What's the high school season
not
like?
my favorite. So they start practices in early to mid November. They start racing around December, and then they race every single week, sometimes twice a week. Then you throw USA swimming meets on top of that all the way
Yeah.
till high school states in the third week of February,
Okay,
and
okay.
that's rough.
Okay,
It's
ours
rough,
goes to
but
the same end, but it starts, I mean, high school starts right away and like they start meets at the beginning of October.
yeah,
So
I
yeah,
actually kind of wish that would be the case so we could finish sooner. I don't like finishing, the third week of February,
yeah,
just because it's right before the time that we really want them to be fast. But it's a different conversation. I'd love to have the high school conversation. I got a lot of thoughts on that. But
yeah.
you're talking about like overload, like volunteer opportunities, and these kids have their own lives, and they
Hmm.
got other football games they want to go to and stuff like that, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of, and like we know it's important and the kids like it, but we do try to be cautious of our ask for the kids who start having stuff every other weekend at a certain
Yeah,
point in the year. So, but it sounds
yeah,
like
no doubt.
at the beginning of the year, or what else do you have planned during the year or during the high school season? It kind of tones down a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a lot of the things that we do are events that they're already going to be at. Some of the additional asks opportunities, we ask the kids to do it, but we've got a lot of senior, pre-senior, senior speed, junior level kids that can come to these events, but we don't need 180 kids to show up. We need 10,
Yeah.
and they love it. So we just created this year other opportunities. We have a starts and turns clinic that we've never done before. So our novice and advanced novice kids only swim Monday through Thursday.
Hmm.
So on Fridays, 2 or 3 times a month, we'll just offer an hour of a start and turn clinic, and the families can come and just really zero in on those things.
Hmm.
Um, we do those things in practice, of course, but
And the high
to only
schoolers?
do that, the high schoolers can come if they want to get volunteer hours.
Yeah.
They can come and help out. So a lot
Got
of those kids will come in. We might get like 3 or 4 or 5 kids that come in and bang out some volunteer hours, and they get to work with the kids. And then the other thing we do, which is a whole nother topic, and I'd love to share more about this in another day when we have more time. But they're called the RVA Community League meets, and what they are is it's like a introductory level swim meet, not
hmm
USA swimming. It's not even sanctioned. You can't
Yeah.
get disqualified. It's on a Friday night, and they just warm up for like 20 minutes.
hmm
The meet is maxed out at 2 hours, and you go home. and they have a theme. So it's kind of like summer league combines with like the fun of summer league combines with teaching them how to be in a USA meet.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Super fun, super awesome. I'm actually my 7-year-old is swimming in ours on Friday. I'm the announcer, and I'm gonna be like, MCing the whole thing. But we have the kids that come and they'll our seniors will come and they'll dress up in Halloween costume this Friday, and the kids will love every bit of it. So we provide those opportunities. They can either do it or they don't do it.
Yeah.
But the ones that do it always love it. Oh, they always love it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, you don't need everybody. You're not going to get everybody. And you definitely don't want the kids there who don't want to be there.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
because
It's
they're not.
mandated. It's no different than practice, right? I don't want people who don't want to be there. I want people who want to bring something and contribute.
Yep, that's very true. Yeah, we call those mini pre's. We do the same thing, call them mini pre's. We do our mini pre series, and then at the end of the season is mini pre champs.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And
Yeah.
we
Anytime
do,
you can get the kids together like that, I think it's great. One of the things I want to do, and I've done it in small settings, but I like to get the older kids in front of the younger kids and just let the younger kids, ask them questions
Mhm.
about their swimming or like how did they get to a certain level and stuff like that. I've done it a few times, and sometimes they just ask silly questions like, "What's your favorite ice cream?"
Yeah,
Like that's cute. Not really what I was going for today, but
yeah,
that type of thing going into a swimming, maybe you can guide them through and say, "Hey, tell them about, do you ever get nervous for meets?" And yeah, oh yeah, let me tell you what I do. And hearing it from a 16-year-old makes it so much more real to a 9 or 10-year-old versus hearing it from 44-year-old coach who hasn't swam in a long time.
yeah. Our head age group coach, Luke, he does a great job actually of if he sees like my pre-senior group getting after it, like doing something fast, or even our senior group, he'll stop his practice and have his like 10 and unders or his 11, 12s come out and go watch for like five
That's
minutes.
awesome.
And he'll just
That's
be
so
like,
cool.
see how they look when they're sprinting? Like just because just that, just like this is what it looks like to swim fast,
Yeah.
paints a picture in the kid's mind.
Oh,
Um,
and then those kids get back in, and what is the next 5 to 10 minutes of the practice?
Zooming.
Amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And they look like that kid. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. He does a really good job of that. So wait, did you say you have to leave in like five?
I do. Yeah, I've got to go pick up my baby and pick up my toddler.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I roll. You know how it is. You
Yeah.
coach early in the morning, you get a lot of work done, and try and balance spending some time with your family when you can. But this has
I-
been so much fun. I'm super excited. Literally every time you text me, I'm like, let's make this happen. I want to talk again. This is great.
Yeah. No, good thoughts, man. We'll get this posted here in a couple days, probably, maybe next week. But all right, Jonathan. Thanks for taking the time, man. You have a good one.
Yes, sir. Have a good one. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.